Today we're going to be ranking every job in the original Final Fantasy Tactics and, you know, the jobs that they've added in War of the Lions, because I love Final Fantasy Tactics and I don't talk about it enough on this channel, so I thought it'd be fun to just go through all the classes and just talk about them. So, you know, if you love JRPGs like Final Fantasy Tactics and you want more reviews and tier lists and just lists in general, then definitely consider subscribing because I do videos like this all the time. We'll start with Archer. Archer is kind of a decent early game class. Their probably best ability is Charge, which can be useful when you kind of mix and match it with other classes, but honestly, when you look at all the classes put together, I don't really like Archer all that much, so I'm gonna put it in C. Black Mage. Black Mage is a really great early game class, and honestly, there are abilities that you can get that are super good just throughout the game, you know, like as you increase the tiers and the end game spells, like you could have a Black Mage at the end of the game and it could be super effective. So honestly, I'm gonna throw a Black Mage up in A tier. Plus it looks cool, it's iconic. It's maybe one of the most iconic looking classes. I've gotta throw an A. All right, next we have the Bard. And honestly, at first, I wasn't sure what to think of the Bard. But if you can get down the Bard tree, it has some incredible abilities like increasing stats for your party. There's an ability that gives you like haste, re-raise, shell, all that stuff. So at some point, Bards become pretty good. You know, move +3 also is really effective, but it takes a while to get there. So as far as a utility class, it's super useful, but you know, it can take a while to get there. So I'm gonna say B for Bard. And by the way, I made all these myself. I don't know why some of them are just the heads and the bodies. I don't know what happened. Something screwed up in Photoshop. All right, the Calculator. Hear me out. I've seen people wipe out an entire board with a calculator ability. Just boom, 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 boom. And like literally everybody dies in one turn. Now, to figure out how to use a calculator, you need to spend some time messing with the bravery and stuff like that. But man, if you can figure out calculators perfectly, they're like one of the most deadly classes in the game. Unfortunately, I've never really messed around with a calculator, but I've watched videos. I've had friends that have messed around with calculators. They're super broken if you know what to do with them. They're really great. Next we have the Dancer. The Dancer is the female version of the Bard, but I feel like it's not as good because it's more of a debuff class. It can do negative stats on enemies. Their final ability is like, you know, they put a ton of status effects on at once. They have jump +3, which can be kind of good if you're, you know, using Lancers. I don't think they're as good as the Bard. They look cool, obviously, but I'm gonna put it in C. I'm not a big fan of the Dancer. The Dark Knight, I mean, come on. Dark Knight is probably the best offensive class in the entire game. In fact, every time I do a new file on Final Fantasy Tactics, I specifically don't make a Dark Knight because they're so broken. I mean, they have the ranged abilities that can just decimate enemies. You know, they can gain life, life leech, sword attacks. The friggin' Dark Knights are amazing. It's a lot of work to get there, a lot of work, but when you get there, they are easily the best class in the game. Oh my god, Geomancer, what a sorry class this is. We're putting them in trash. Geomancer is like one of those classes that is like the step in between when you're trying to get to other classes, but I feel like it never does good damage. I feel like they never have good utility. They don't look that cool. The Geomancer might be the worst class in the whole game. I hate Geomancers, they're not very good. The Knight, you know, Knights are just generic, right? But I feel like, you know, they can have some interesting utility later on. You know, armor, equipping different classes with armor, which can be kind of cool. One of my favorite abilities to do is, you know, combine a ninja ability with 2 swords. So you can have a knight that hits twice, which can be pretty devastating. I use knights a lot. They're not like top tier, but I mean, they're pretty strong, and you know, you can break armor and stuff like that, break weapons. Knights are pretty good. Knights are pretty good. I'm gonna throw them in A tier. We don't have Chemist. Oh no, we gotta start over. So I had to pause recording because I forgot one of the most important classes, one of my favorite classes, maybe my favorite class in the whole game, and that's the Chemist. So we gotta toss Chemist up in S tier, and here's why. It is a starting class, yes, but their utility and their abilities all throughout the game are incredible. Auto Potion, amazing. throw is super helpful. Even if you change classes, it can be a fun ability. But even, you know, if you're far away with the chemist and you can throw an item and heal somebody, incredible. Plus they can use guns later on when you unlock guns. So they have incredible range, incredible utility, and you get them early. So you can master chemists super early. I think chemists are one of the best classes in the game, easily going up in S tier. Okay, Lancers. Lancers are interesting because they can hit spaces away, which is kind of cool. And if I'm not mistaken, they can hit diagonally too. So they have interesting range for a melee character. Their jump is super strong. They can move up pretty high. Their jump is high, so they can like move up better than most. Other than that, they're not like super good. Like some of their late abilities aren't like amazing, but their range of movements and the range of attack for a melee, and if you can land the charge jump abilities, really, really good. So I'm gonna throw them in A. I like Lancers a lot. Mediator, I don't really like Mediators. I mean, they're an interesting class because they help you recruit like monsters and stuff if you're into that. I was never into that. My favorite thing about tactics is mixing and matching all the different job classes and doing that sort of thing. So for me, I never really liked the Mediators. So they're not like total trash because they have some interesting utility if you do want to recruit monsters, but I'm gonna throw them in D. I just never really worked for me. Okay, next we have the Mime. Again, I don't really like the Mime. On paper, it's interesting, right? Like you can copy other abilities, so essentially it can be anything, but you're contingent on either what your other characters have or what the enemies have. So you, like, their utility isn't great. Obviously, they don't have any abilities. All they do is copy. I don't think they look that great. So unless you're really clever, which I really don't ever get when it comes to Final Fantasy Tactics, it's hard to find a utility for Mime. So I'm gonna throw them in D. Not great. The Monk. I love monks. Their abilities are incredible. They can heal, they can revive, they can attack from range, they can hit hard, they have a lot of HP. I love monks. Whenever I make a character in Tactics, I always like to have a monk with knight armor, because they already naturally have a lot of HP, but then when you put armor on them, they'll just never die. So I love monks. This might seem crazy, but I'm gonna throw it up in S tier. I really like monks. They're a super good class. All right, next we have ninja. Again, I don't know why the head got cut off or whatever. I love ninjas also. Their utility is incredible. Their ability to attack twice is awesome. That's such a great ability that you can pair with other classes. I always do that, whether it's with squires or a knight or something. I love that ability. You know, they have pretty high dodge. They can move really far. They can throw items like, you know, like little fireballs or the shurikens. They're fast. They can go a lot. They're really hard to get, unfortunately. But when you get one, I think the ninjas are pretty incredible. I'm going to throw them in S tier. Ninjas are one of my favorite classes. Next, we have the Onion Knight. What a miserable class this is. The Onion Knights, they don't have any abilities. Their only utility is that they can equip any weapon, and that's it. And I think they can equip like any equipment, like any armor. Onion Knights are useless. I hate Onion Knights. They brought them in War of the Lions. I don't know why they even added. I know it's sort of like a long-standing Final Fantasy Tactics class. Nope, this is straight trash for me. Straight trash. Outside, even worse than Geomancer. I think that's probably the worst class in the game. Oracle is interesting again on paper because they cast spells that can do status effects on characters. This seems like an in-between kind of class where like you get the Oracle abilities to pair with something else, but the Oracle on itself, I never found a great utility for. I don't think they look particularly interesting either. Beowulf is interesting because he's like a Dark Knight, but instead of like Dark Knight abilities, he uses Oracle abilities, which is kind of cool. But yeah, they're like a step above trash, but yeah, I'm not a big fan of Oracles at all. Samurais are super fun. I love the samurai abilities where you get the swords and they can hit enemies around you. It can also do healing properties and give you buffs. Samurais are really, really fun. If you master them, they have great utility. They're one of the coolest looking classes in the game. I really like samurais. They don't like have any game breaking abilities like some of these classes too, so I'm gonna throw them in A. It's like a really strong A for me. I love samurais. I always try to get a samurai in my team whenever I can, when I play, whenever I do a file. Squires, I am trying to decide what I want to do with squires. Obviously at the beginning, they're not super great, but as the game goes on, they have some really incredible abilities. One, I think it's Shout, where it like just buffs your character a lot, and that happens I think after chapter 3 or 4. And then they also have Gain JP Up, I believe, which is also a super good utility later in the game. Eventually, they can also equip Armor, I think. Or maybe it's just Ramza that can do that. But I just remember at some point in the game, the Squires go from being like okay to amazing. So I don't think it belongs in S tier. That would be kind of crazy, but I think Squires are a really underrated class that get really good later in the game. So I'm gonna throw them in A tier. Let's see, Summoners. Summoners are cool. You know, obviously you can have all the summon abilities. Those hit hard. The problem with Summoners is those take a lot of time to charge, and they cost a lot of MP. So it requires, you know, picking abilities from other classes to make it useful. So on their own, they're like pretty good, but they're not like amazing. Yeah, this is more like a utility class that needs a lot of help to be really, really good. So I'm gonna throw them in B tier. They're not bad, but they just need some help. Thief. Thief is also one of those classes that, like, you know, once you get to the deep dungeon or certain battles where you need to steal stuff, I mean, steal's a good ability, but like everything else, like a lot of their abilities along the way are not great. They don't hit particularly hard. They don't look particularly cool. I'm putting them in C only for their utility to steal weapons and equipment later in the game, but as like a battle-to-battle type of class, it's not super great in my opinion. Time Mages. Time Mages are really cool. This is a really cool class. Obviously, they have Haste and Slow, which has a lot of great utility. I believe they have Meteor, which is a great offensive ability. And then they have stuff like Float and Teleport and stuff like that. So they're a really neat utility class that I think, again, goes pretty underrated. So again, I don't think it belongs in S because I don't think there's any super like game-breaking abilities it has, but it belongs in A. I like Time Mages a lot. All right, last and certainly not least, we have the White Mage. Obviously, it's the best healer in the game. Maybe you could argue the Chemist is another good healer, but obviously amazing healing abilities and buffing abilities. It also has Holy, which hits super hard. So I think White Mages are another underappreciated class. And it's an iconic look too. Like, I love the look of White Mages. Yeah, that's an A tier class for me. I almost want to put it in S just because their healing is so amazing and they have some pretty good offensive abilities. But I think I'm gonna have to leave it in A. If you love Final Fantasy Tactics, Final Fantasy, JRPGs, and lists like this, definitely consider subscribing because I definitely do videos like this, you know, every single week. Not always tier lists, but you know, a review, a list, something to do with JRPG. So thanks a lot for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time.